called Today. Live it, love it, and the day is yours. A warm good morning to the dignitaries, guests, delegates, and one and all present here. Design thinking is a human centered approach to innovation that draws from the designer toolkit to integrate the need of people, the possibility of technology, and the requirement of business success. Yes, with this short notes, I welcome you all on behalf of Institution Innovation Council AVIT for the workshop on design thinking, critical thinking, and innovation design. With this regards, may I now request Mr. Praveen sir, President of IIC AVIT, to deliver the welcome address.
On behalf of Institution Innovation Council, IIC AVIT, I warmly welcome our today's chief guest, Dr. Ramakrishnan Ramani sir, Assistant Vice President, Intellect Arena Design. I warmly welcome our today's Vice Principal, Administration. I welcome all the faculty members, students, and all the department coordinators for this wonderful event. So design thinking, I think we would like to give a small glimpse of what IIC is doing. It's Institution Innovation Council, which has been established in the year 2018. And we have been actively participating, and we are conducting so many events related to innovation, entrepreneurship, and IPR related activities. So these we are so I'd like to inform that we had established an incubation center, that is Ganeshan Incubation and Entrepreneurship Center, and we had nearly 8 startups, upcoming startups, where students have incubated so many products, and some of the products are one of our alumni from biomedical department has got a fund of rupees 15 lakhs for incubating a product called medical organ box for transit of organs. And another innovation related to energy sector is a flywheel based batteryless UPS, where we bagged around 4 from national NIC. So these are achievements what we have made, and we are conducting a lot of events. So I hope this event would also be very fruitful to our students. I once again welcome our today's chief guest, Dr. Ramakrishnan Ramani sir, for this wonderful event. I request all the students to interact and get benefited out of this. I thank once again for organizers Supapriya ma'am and Prabhakaran sir for organizing this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your warm welcome address. Now, I would like to invite our Honorable Vice Principal of Admin AVIT, Professor L. Prabhu sir, to deliver the presidential address.
Sir, I think you are on mute, sir.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Respected Chief Guest, Mr. Dr. Ramakrishnan Ramani, Assistant Vice President, Intellect Design Area, and Ramnath Prabhu sir, and IIC President Praveen, IIC Convener Suvapriya Vijay Kumar, Mr. Prabhakar, all my faculty members, and my dear students. Good morning to one and all present here. It's indeed my immense pleasure to be part of this particular webinar. As mentioned by our IIC President Institution Innovation Council of AVIT is conducting a lot of events with respect to design thinking, with respect to entrepreneurship, with respect to IPR. Like it started in the 3 years back, we started IIC, and the last 3 years, the ecosystem was already established within the institution. But people, that is especially the students, should take it in the positive way, and they should come up with their ideas, because they are the one who is going to convert their particular ideas in terms of product. So for everything, the first thing that comes into mind is about design thinking. The topic, even we have for getting a degree. So in a process where any particular idea
His voice is breaking, I think, right?
Yes.
Praveen sir, can I inform to Prabhu sir?
Yeah,
yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, now it's okay, sir. Now it's okay.
I think I lost some network. As we all know that design thinking is an important factor as a starting point to convert an idea in terms of a particular product, where a student should empathize, should define that particular idea, ideate, go for prototype, then finally they should go for testing that. Whereas the critical thinking, they have to analyze of all the available facts or evidence or observations to come to a particular conclusion. In terms of innovation design, yes, they have to check about the desirability, they have to check the feasibility, even they have to check the viability. If all these things are there, then they can go for taking that particular idea in terms of next level. So this particular workshop is being organized only to motivate the student to understand the process, how to proceed. Everyone will be having an idea, but they don't know how to take it to the next level. So the main agenda of this particular meeting is the student should realize they should be very attentive throughout this particular webinar. They should form a series of take notes and then proceed further when they are approaching a particular thing. We are going to organize a hackathon, Smart India Hackathon, in the month of March 3rd week. Already the problem statement has been defined. Now it's our turn. Students should start focusing on that. It's not only for Smart India Hackathon, even we do have a Hydrothon. One more contest also is being organized by IIC and Rotaract Club. So a lot of contests will be there. Students should take up the particular, what are the initial ideas they are having. People, mentors, innovation ambassadors are there. They should talk with the innovation ambassadors. They should start charting out all the possible things to become as a successful entrepreneur. As rightly mentioned by our IIC president, we do have a separate Ganeshan Incubation and Entrepreneurship Center where we are going to help, that is, fund our students to promote their ideas in terms of converting into a product. Already we do have a separate MSME incubation center. Already we got 15 lakh fund for a technology enhanced medical organ box that is a transmitting medical organ box, medical organ transplantations. Those that already it's there. So students are already motivated after, that is, by seeing all these happenings within the campus. Still a long way to go. It's up to the faculty members to identify the students' potential and bring it to our innovation and incubation cell so that they can experience the real scenario to become an entrepreneur. So I wish this particular program will bring a lot of information to the students as well as to the faculty members, and it will be a fruitful one, and we'll see good number of participants in the upcoming hackathons. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for your thought-provoking address. It is my privilege to give a brief introduction of our today's resource person, Dr. Ramakrishnan Ramani, Assistant Vice President of Intellectual Design, Haryana, and he also the faculty in the School of Design Thinking. He anchor and co-anchor a variety of sessions for corporate and academic institutions. Dr. Ramakrishnan Ramani was introduced to the concept of design thinking during his earlier stint with Polarized, smitten by the immense potential that this could bring about to any human endeavor. He volunteered to the associate with intellectual design thinking initiative such as hot resting and hankering walkthrough at Intellectual Unique Design Center. Today, as a faculty, he also authored blog posts, various workshop collateral and tools, and senior management communication. Dr. Ramakrishnan Ramani has varied experience spanning from journalism to market research to corporate communication and marketing. The connecting thread being content and communication. Starting his career as a journalist with New Indian Express, has he experienced in strategizing and communication and content for various purposes of media, corporate communication, brand and marketing and learning. He is also deeply interested in technological innovation, especially in an area of military technology, and has published global report when he was a senior researcher covering military market development in Europe and Asia. On the academic front, Dr. Ramakrishnan Ramani holds a first-class master's degree and doctorate degree in defense and strategic studies from the University of Madras. He also holds PG diploma in journalism and mass communication. He has published over 17 papers in peer-reviewed journals and books and has presented papers in national and international seminars. He also actively offers guest lectures at the University of Madras and for Tamil Nadu Police. We feel very much honored to you have our today's speaker, sir. Now I request you to please take over the session, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Padma Priya. Thank you for that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. At the outset, I would like to share my deep appreciation and thanks to Prabhu sir, Praveen sir, Subhapriya ma'am, Prabhakaran sir for this opportunity. I think AVIT is amongst those cream institutions that gives innovation and the opportunity for students to think big and act big instead of being stickler to the rigmarole of academic requirements. So from what Prabhu sir spoke just a short couple of minutes ago, I mean, that speaks volumes about AVIT's mission and their vision for the students in the upcoming years, right? It's very nice to know that already in just 3 short years, right, since 2018, that you started your incubation center, you already have 8 startups, right? You have got 2 brilliant ideas about medical organ box. We'll be talking about an interesting story in a few minutes, kind of very similar to this concept, right? And batteryless UPS. I mean, I have not heard of a batteryless UPS. That's something very, very interesting. I would like to know more about it personally. And I think it's a phenomenal job. And there's one very interesting thing that Prabhu sir said at the outset is when he connected to a very interesting model of design thinking, wherein he brought the intersection of business requirement, right, the business feasibility, viability, and the human need, which is basically what ensures an awesome output in terms of design thinking. So it's very interesting to note that the faculty members, they're also aligned to design thinking, and as an institute, you're doing so much. So here's one small step from the School of Design Thinking, wherein I thought I'll give you some very interesting inputs on what constitutes design thinking in the first place, right? If you do a Google search, there'll be so many models that you'll come across, right? So there are so many organizations, so many institutes that talk about design thinking. But what actually goes into being a design thinker? Just because you know how to brainstorm, you know how to apply certain tools, you know how to create prototypes, does that mean that you're a design thinker, right? It's as good as saying, I am an engineer. I have got an engineering degree. So am I an engineer? If that is so, then imagine people like Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, Sir Vishweswaraya, I mean, epitomes of their vocation, their field that they're into. So what I'm trying to say at the outset, friends, is that just like in any job, just like in any vocation, even design thinking requires a mindset, And that is what I think is predominantly important, the most important thing, even before one actually gets into design thinking. So let us look at that. I will definitely also explain about design thinking. And over the next, say, 1.5 hours, let us see what we can do, what we can understand about this very interesting concept. Just to give you a very short introduction, you might be thinking, see, if you would have done a little bit of research on what Intellect Design Arena is, you will know that we are a company that's into financial technology, right? So what does financial technology, a company that's creating software for banks, got to do with design thinking? Our story with design thinking started way back in 2008, 2007, 2008, when our chairman went to the US, to Silicon Valley, right? That is the happening place wherein you have all these great companies, Google, Tesla, and all these companies over there, right? They come up with great products, great services. And we say, if there's innovation happening in the world, it's at Silicon Valley. So our chairman also went there to see what can we learn from them. And he was interested. He was surprised to see that these companies have a turnover that exceeds the GDP of India, especially in those days, 2008, 2009. He said, if these handful of companies are able to apply design thinking and come up with these great products and services, why can't we Indians do the same thing? So he brought in this concept of design thinking to our organization. We tried to apply design thinking, and guess what? We failed. We completely failed. Design thinking did not seem to be our cup of tea, as they say. And that's what got us thinking. Why is it that they are able to do it, but we are not able to do it? What's the difference? And then we knew that design thinking is not just application of a process, just application of some tools and so on, process and frameworks and so on. It requires a mindset. To be a design thinker, you need a mindset. Let me go back to AVIT's example. 3 years and you have got 8 startups. There are very select few students who have it in them to be an entrepreneur, to risk it all to create a startup. There are thousands of students who graduate every year from AVIT. But why is it that only a few of them have it in them to, think differently, to innovate and to risk it all through a startup? That's a mindset. And that is exactly what I'm emphasizing here when it comes to design thinking. So let me just to help in my presentation, let me quickly share my screen. Just give me a few seconds. Right. And so the standard question, is my screen visible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You're audible and your screen is also visible, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Right. So today's topic is, as Sir said, design thinking and innovation design, right? I will briefly touch about critical thinking, but more as a comparison to design thinking than to get into the actuals of critical thinking. Because design thinking is what we do, and design thinking is something so unique, right, that not many people, though increasingly people are doing it, not many people have yet started approaching their problems through the design thinking way. And let me start my presentation with an interesting story that is kind of related to this medical organ box that students at AVIT are working on. Right. You see this very interesting picture, right, of 3 women, a child, and this interesting device on the lower left corner. Does anybody know what this is? Can anybody tell me if they know what product this is, what's the name of the brand, and so on? Friends, especially students, it will be great if you can, also interact, because this is not a formal webinar where only I talk and you listen. Please reply anytime you like, stop me anytime you like, you're absolutely free. The more the discussion we have, the better it is. There'll be more learning because of that. Okay, so this is a very interesting story. Some people say it happened in and around Hyderabad. Some people say it happened in Nepal, but irrespective of that fact, it is a very, very human-centric story. And the story goes like this. A couple of years ago, close to about a decade ago, about 10 years ago, the government of that place, they came up with, they got to understand that a lot of children, especially prematurely born children, died very early in their infancy, right? Actually, within a couple of hours of having been born. And this was obviously very, very troublesome. And so what did the government do? The government reached out to a lot of NGOs, reached out to other government departments, to many hospitals and so on, including the World Health Organization. And when all the experts got together, their data showed that these children were typically born premature, as I said, and they died while being treated in the hospital. And so the biggest gap they found in the treatment of these unfortunate children was that there was a lack of incubators. So you know what an incubator is, right? It's that small box wherein a newborn child is kept, and it's allowed to be in that till its immune system is more robust and it's able to survive in our environment typically. Now, while this was going on, there were a lot of NGOs, lot of government departments, foreign countries, which are more than happy to, donate incubators. At the end of the day, it's a young child's life, right? So there was so much empathy and all that, and they were ready to do it. But unfortunately, despite the fact that incubators came rushing into the region, the government was more than happy. Incubators were into all the primary healthcare centers, secondary healthcare centers, tertiary healthcare centers, main hospitals, and so on. The statistics showed that the children actually did not survive, that the statistics of survival was still dismally low. So what happened? The government started thinking again. While all this was happening, there were a group of students from a university in the US, I believe it was from the Stanford University, who, having heard this in the global media, said, okay, we should also try to do something. Young students, just like all of you, right? With a lot of enthusiasm and that feeling that they should do something for the society so strongly in them, they came to this place and they studied the problem. What they did was something very important and something very unique. These children understood certain things that the government unfortunately overlooked. Number one, most of the parents, right, a very, very high percentage of the parents were largely illiterate. So they did not know what to do with such children, right? The second thing was, many of these villages were in very, very, very rural, near the forest, at the foothills of the mountains and so on, basically in very inaccessible areas. The roads were bad, and that region was plagued with very unpredictable electricity supply, which means that for a large amount of time, there was no electricity. Incubators need electricity to work. They also found one thing, that many of these children, if not most of them, actually died en route to the hospital or on the way to the hospital, or not actually at the hospital. And so this actually made them rethink the question, what should be done? And that's when these children came across this very interesting device. They created it, they designed it, and this product is called Embrace, right? What does this product do? It is nothing but a portable incubator, except for the fact that it does not need electricity and it is man portable. In other words, just like this young mother that you're seeing on your screen, right, with this child on her lap, anybody can tie this on their back or hold it in their hands while they're going to the hospital. So it does not depend vehicles to a large extent. It does not depend on electricity. The heating system in this particular device is a pad which is immersed in boiling water for a couple of hours or so, and then it's placed into the bag, and the bag is kept warm in the ideal temperature that the child should be till he or she reaches the hospital. And the beauty of it is that this is not expensive at all. It is very, very, very affordable. So much so that every panchayat in the village can afford a couple of these to be kept in the primary healthcare centers. Tremendous this thing, and they found that it was of great value to the parents. Now let us move on. What are the three big learnings that we actually noticed here? If you look at the story, or try to decipher from what I said, there are three very, very important things that these young students from Stanford did. And these three things they did are the pillars of design thinking, right? There may be 10 different approaches to design thinking, 5-10 different processes, many frameworks, hundreds of tools. But these three things are the three pillars. If you do not adhere to these three pillars, right, follow them, then the very exercise of design thinking is lost. And surprisingly, it is something that we all should do and actually do day in and day out. What are they? The first is listening. Are you actually listening to what your customer wants? Are you listening to the actual user needs of the people for whom you're providing this product or service? It is about listening, friends, and not hearing. Hearing is a capability that we all have, right? You are hearing me speak. I hear you reply. I heard sir introduce the session. But are we listening? Are we going behind what is actually being said? The second thing that they did was their dialogue. And what is dialoguing? They stood there with the end customers, with the villagers, with the government people, with NGOs, with various other organizations, and spoke to them one-on-one as equals, right? It is not about who is right. Oh, I'm saying the government is wrong. They bought incubators. The country does not have electricity. What is the use of incubators? There is no blame game here. The idea is to understand. When you dialogue, you try to find out what is right and not who is right. Right? The ego comes at the very end. It is empathy which is at the forefront. And third and most important is they observed. Why is observation very important here? If you look at a lot of interesting product development stories, typically one example is Gillette Guard. I'm sure many of my college friends here and the faculty members, the males, tend to use this brand called Gillette Guard, which is a very famous razor. When they launched a product, the product failed terribly. Today, we know Gillette Guard is a very popular brand in India, but when they launched it, it failed because of a design flaw, right? And why did that come? Because the designers failed to observe the way Indians use shaving sets in India, right? So observation basically tells you all the things that the customers do not themselves know. And this is what the students did. They went there to the villages, they lived in the villages, they observed the families, they observed all the things that the government failed to observe. And because they applied listening, dialoguing, and observation, that they were able to unearth more requirements, bigger gaps, and were able to come up with certain solutions that was tentatively able to help these children. So friends, when you're talking of design thinking, it is paramount. It is absolutely important that you exercise listening, dialoguing, and observation. If you fail to do this, then the entire exercise has no purpose. Right. When you talk of design thinking, right, there is obviously the word design in it. Design thinking has two words, design and thinking. But the actual outcome of design thinking comes in the doing part of it, but we'll come to that later. Now, when we say design, what exactly is design? Can anybody tell me from the student fraternity here, what do you think is design? Anybody?
The structure of product.
Structure of a product, very nice. Yes. That's a good answer. Structure of a product. Anybody else?
Sir, to make compact size, sir.
Sorry, sir. To
make compact size for any device. Compact, suitable size.
Compact size. Okay. Structure and compact size. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Sir, and also to introduce a correct form factor for the particular design what we do. That is a particular idea what we think.
Form factor or idea. Okay, great. Wonderful, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
So plan and mad, sir.
Plan. Okay. Plan and you used another word.
Mad, sir.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Plan and mad, sir, or arrange.
Okay, okay. Plan and make it. Okay. Wonderful. Plan. I'll take the word plan. It's very interesting. Okay. Anybody else, friends? 2, 3 more answers.
Prototype, sir.
Nice. Prototyping. Okay. Thank you. Anything more? We saw, just to help you recollect, we saw structure, we saw compact size, we saw form factor, plan and make, prototype. Anything else? If you actually look at the word design, it is a very interesting English word, right? You would have studied in English grammar. There are 2 types of words, right? There are many types, but there are 2 important functions for words. One is a noun, another is a verb. Noun is anything, right? Name of a person, place, animal, thing, that's a noun. Verb is an action word, right? So design, the word design can be used both as a noun. It can also be used as a verb. Like for example, when Sir said plan, prototype, these are all action, these are all verbs. Structure, compact size, form factor, these are all nouns. So it was a very interesting mix. You use the word design as a noun, you're using design as a verb. Any more examples? Okay. So if you consider the word design, there are actually 5 very, very important words that are associated with this. The first is that design is a very conscious effort, right? It is not something that happens ad hoc, just like that. When you're designing something, you're making a very conscious, very disciplined approach towards achieving something. It is innovative, it is functional, it has aesthetics, and all that is based on users' needs. Let us see the definition here. A very interesting definition. Design is a process of working to develop solutions in a conscious and innovative way in which both the functional and aesthetic requirements are included based on the user's needs, right? The 5 words that I said. Since we are all academicians here, we are, students, we are in a college, this definition will help to understand what design is. It is, as I said, conscious. It is innovative. Why innovative? Because it creates that delta, the difference between what is currently there and what will be once your product is into the picture, right? That delta, that differential, that is innovation. It looks at both the functional part and the aesthetic part. So it does not just look at how it works. It also looks at how the experience is, how beautiful it is, what is the impact, what is the outcome of it, right? Steve Jobs, right? The very famous designer and Apple, when we talk of Steve Jobs, we always think of superlative products. He says that for him, design is not just about how a thing looks, but it also is about how a thing functions. So he emphasizes on both of these things, the functionality of a product or a service and the aesthetics behind it. And always at the fundamental, at the foundation of all this is the basic requirement of the user. The user should need something for all your effort to actually be put into place, right? If the user does not need something, if there is no need for a certain product or a service, why waste time and energy on it? Correct? Like our friends are working on that medical organ box, there is absolutely a need to get organs healthy and the perfect condition in time to the patient who deserves it, who needs it, isn't it? A very, 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 very important user need. We cannot stress enough on the requirement or on the innovation of such a product. Right? Great job. So a case with batteryless UPS. We are a country that has so many industries, so many factories, right? We are always energy hungry. And in such a scenario, when in our country also, when electricity is a problem, things like batteryless UPS would play a definitely great role, right? So you people have understood the user need, understood a gap. So this is what this is how design could be defined as. Now let us look at some examples of great design, right? Some interesting designs. Can you tell me what you think would be a great design according to you? Again, any example that comes to your mind. Okay, just to make the interaction a little bit more interesting, let us not have examples of buildings like Taj Mahal or products like the iPhone or vehicles like the aeroplane and the ship and all that, because this is the first thing that comes to our mind. Anything else that you have not observed, right? But which is actually a wonderful design. Any examples?
Electrical bulb.
Electric bulb, yes. But then, yes, it has addressed a great problem. It is an invaluable part of our life. Something more ubiquitous, something that is taken for granted. Bulb is a brilliant example, absolutely no doubt in it. Any other example? During the course of this webinar, you'll be seeing some examples that we observe every single day, but we just miss it.
Mobile phone, sir.
Yes, but as I said, no mobile phone, because mobile phone is something we immediately remember, right? Good design, immediately mobile phone. So absolutely.
But it's having different design, no? It's not a. Yeah, but earlier we were having that big size mobile phone. Now we are having for very small, and nowadays we are having for a watch. In watch itself, you can do all the WhatsApp, etc., etc. Watch is the best design only, no?
Absolutely, sir. Spot on.
WhatsApp. You
Very
can
true, sir.
make call, you can make whatever you want, no? And nowadays
Absolutely.
one watch is available. You can check the pressure, sugar, everything you can check it. That's
Yes, sir.
a new design only. Just my
Absolutely.
suggestion
Absolutely.
only.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you.
Your,
Yeah, thank you.
example of the mobile phone, especially the smartphone, is brilliant. I'm sure, sir, you are also of my generation, probably, or maybe little senior. You'll remember during
Yeah.
the 80s, early 90s, if we had to go for a vacation, right? If imagine
Yes,
you're
sir.
going
Yes,
to
sir.
Kodaikanal or Ooty, we will take our telephone directory book because in case of emergency, we'll have to contact.
That's the biggest process.
We will take our camera with us. We will take so many equipments with us, right? To
Yes, yes, yes.
basically and enjoy that holiday. But today, one smartphone, you have everything. You have camera, you have video phone, video camera, you have telephone, you have directory, you have everything in one device.
Yeah,
One
that's
phone
great.
carries everything. You don't need anything else for a good vacation.
That phone also big size, sir. Nowadays you can small phone, you can see all the things.
Exactly,
Now
exactly.
compact phone is there.
Making it miniaturized.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, true. Yeah, thank you.
Any other example, friends?
Sir, pen.
Pen, definitely, yes. Okay, let me share one example, and I'm sure you'll all be laughing now when I show you this. Safety pin. Right? I'm sure everybody here, men and women in this group here, have all seen this, are all using this. I'm sure all of us are having this somewhere around us, right? Did you know that the safety pin was invented over 150 years ago? And the design did not change. Today, yes, we have safety pin made of stainless steel, of brass, of plastic. Some are big, some are small, some have different cap colors, so on and so forth. But the design of the safety pin has not changed one single bit. You might now have it on your smiley badges and all that just to attach it, but the function of the safety pin and the design has remained the same for over a century and a half, 150 years. See, I told you something that we are seeing every single day, but we do not look at the value or the design that it is. Beautiful example. Let us look at one more. Dabbawalas, right? This very, very popular group of people who offer an invaluable service to the people of Mumbai. For those friends who are not aware, this service called that Mumbai Dabbawalas are basically, they are like your logistics department. They are like your delivery guys, right? Your courier service. What they do is, Mumbai is a city that's always on the run. They never sleep. People get up early in the morning because they live about 30-40 kilometers away. They have to take a train, they have to take 2 buses and so on to reach office. They'll start at 6 o'clock in the morning to reach their office at 9 o'clock in the morning, right? But the women at the house do not have time to prepare lunch for their husbands, for their sons and daughters and so on. So they get up a little late, they prepare it. But what do these dabbawalas do? They get the lunch box from your house. They take it all the way 30, 40, 50 kilometers to your office. They deliver to your office at exactly 12, 12:30. After lunch, they collect it by around 2:30, 3 o'clock, and they return it back to your house, right? Without fail. Their success rate, they say they are defeated Six Sigma by, I don't know what's the parameter, but the Dabbawalas are a case study by great universities like Harvard, Stanford, and others, for the simple reason that the average literacy rate or the education of a Dabbawala, like this young gentleman that you're seeing here, is only about 4th standard, 5th standard, maximum 8th standard. Most of them have not completed schooling. They speak Marathi, some of them speak Hindi, absolutely no English. They do not use fancy GPS, Google Maps, nothing of that. They do not have high-end cars, lorries, trucks, nope. Their logistics is by cycle, some of them use motorbike, and largely it's these Mumbai suburban trains like that you are seeing in the picture here. That is all. And how do they code? How do they get address? They have no address and all that. They use simple alphanumeric geometrical shapes and colors. That is all their color coding is. This service was also started over 100 years ago. Friends, when I'm giving you time frames, right? 100 years ago, 150 years ago, imagine the way our society was at that time. Bombay over 100 years ago. So let us say 1920s, right? We are in 2022, say 1922, right? How was Bombay? hardly any suburban trains, maybe one train from Thane to wherever, right? No buses, largely cycles. It was started then. And even today, there has been no change, and still it works like a charm. It works so beautifully, right? That is why people from other universities come, they study here. We have the spokesperson of Dabbawala attending the weddings of royalties overseas, and so on and so forth, right? Brilliant example. No technology, nothing great. Even the fees that they charge for this, right? Hardly 1,500, 2,000 rupees a month for this terrific service. And they're so secure. There are stories that men send their weekly salary or monthly salary, especially in those companies where they pay in cash, not in bank credit like you and I have. They put the money in the dabbas and they send it home because they are 100% sure that their wife at home will get that salary. They send home cinema ticket to their wife, thanking them for that beautiful lunch that they're given. This is the great service, and the average education is just middle school or high school. That's it. Great service, right? Look at another example, and I'm sure we all can resonate with this. A great example of how a bad design is. Our foot overbridge, something that we see here in Mambalam railway station and in many other railway stations across the city, across the country, right? It is very, very important. People should not cross railway tracks just like that, right? They should take a foot overbridge or a subway. Many stations have this foot overbridge, right? Because it helps people to cross safely, but is it designed well? How do handicapped people climb up and get down? If you are in a hurry and it's a big station with say 6, 7 platforms, and you're not sure which platform your train is coming, especially a suburban train, how will you get down in the hurry? How will you get down in all that rush to get into your train in time, right? There's a lot to be desired. And that is why, since there are not many takers for this, people are only forced to use it. That is why you still have accidents, people being run over trains in the vicinity of railway stations, right? Adjacent to railway stations. So this is an example of a great function that it is meant to do. A really, really must have infrastructure that's given by the government. But is it being designed well? Is it doing its job properly? You and I know because we use this very often, right? Let us look at what are the elements of great design now. We saw some great examples. We saw 1 or 2 bad examples of design. But what are the elements? So when I say design, what are the elements that plays a very important role in this, in understanding what a design is, right? There are these elements which I think are very, very important. First of all, a design should be very simple. What is the point in designing something that is very complex, that the end user finds it very difficult to use, right? I have heard people say, very senior people say, that they like the design of the iPhone because the iPhone is so intuitively designed. Basically, it means that the iPhone does not need a user manual. You just switch it on and you know what are the apps. The apps are designed in such a way that it tells you what that app is meant for. That is why you see 4-year, 5-year-old, 6-year children and 60, 70, 80-year-old people also using the iPhone, right? It is so intuitively designed, so nicely designed. It is so simple. So simplicity is a very, very important factor of a good design. Experience. When Prabhu sir gave the example, right, of one very interesting approach to design thinking, which I will explain a little bit more in later, he spoke about the business feasibility, the technological viability, and the human need, right? When these three intersect is what you get experience, a great experience, right? So a good design should give you a great experience. Something like this phone, the mobile phone that Sir said, like the Fitbit or your health tracker that you wear on your wrist. You go for a walk, you go for a jogger, you wear it every day, tells you how many footsteps you're taken, what is your pulse beat, what is your temperature, how much oxygen do you have in your blood. Thanks to the pandemic, that's another important parameter we all need to be aware of, right? Such a great experience. It should be frictionless, which means that if you're any new product that is going to be introduced in the market should fit into the market and work in the market without any difficulty, right? If you're designing something for the house, so that somebody uses, let us take the example of these two great stories that Sir said, the medical organ box, right? Absolutely required, right? And the way it should be designed is that it should be immediately portable across by any vehicle. It should be lightweight. It should not be expensive, right? Basically, it should be easy to plug and play. That's what we mean by that. So it should be absolutely frictionless. There should be no janjat, no challenge in using it. Efficient, obviously, right? So when you're using a product, it should improve your efficiency. It should make it better. On the other side, it should ensure complexity reduction, which basically means if you're doing a very complicated mathematical equation, if you're using a scientific calculator, it reduces the complexity just like that, right? Your MS Excel sheet, for that matter, doing complex equations, complex calculations on that huge data structure. You can crunch it on Excel sheet and make it so simple. The idea is these products, the great design should basically reduce complexity. And a very, very important thing, when you are working on a great design, it is absolutely important that you start questioning assumptions. What is questioning assumption? Let me give you an example. When you go to a restaurant, what do you expect? First thing that you enter into a restaurant and you get a table. You expect the waiter to come and give you a menu and say, sir, madam, this is the menu. Please order whatever you want. It has the food described in it. It has the price of the food. Now, question yourself, should a restaurant actually give you a menu card? Why can't a restaurant come and say, sir, we have chicken, we have fish, we have potato, we have tomato, onion, chili, ABCD vegetables. What would you like to have? You tell us. These are the menu, these are the ingredients that we have. You tell us what you'd like to eat. We will make it and give it for you. Or why should a restaurant charge you for the food? Food is free. They'll charge you for the amount of time you spend in the restaurant. So if you're spending 1 hour in the restaurant, right? And this is a model that's recently come up in Bangalore. There's an interesting development. So some of the people who are into the food industry said, food is free, no money for the food. If you're spending 1 hour in the restaurant, we'll charge you 500 rupees. If you're spending 2 hours in the restaurant with a group of friends, 1,000 rupees and so on, right? But eat as much as you want, do not waste food. That's all. Brilliant, no? They're questioning assumptions. By questioning the assumptions, they are actually changing the way that opening new plethora of opportunities in which business can be done. So it is very, very important to question assumptions, right? At the existing way things are done. And finally, at the bottom, you see something very, very, very important, empathy, right? What is empathy here? Empathy is basically getting into the shoes of your end user and understanding the world as they see it, right? It is very easy to explain it, but very difficult to do. Empathy, my friends, is not sympathy. It is very different from sympathy. Empathy tells you how that end user feels, what should be done to improve their lot. And by understanding that, you get greater and better ideas of creating new products and business models. Exactly like our friends with the medical organ box and the batteryless UPS. They empathize with the end user. And because of this, they have identified gaps and they're creating such a great examples of design, right? So these are some elements which are absolutely important when you're talking of great design. So what all can you actually design? Is there anything that you cannot design? It'll be interesting to know from any of you if there is anything that you cannot design. So friends, tell me. Some of you might say, okay, time machine cannot be designed. How can you travel back in time? But if you look at the way science and technology developed over the past 100, 150 years, the curve of development of innovation is so steep. Almost every day you keep beating, you keep going beyond the barriers of today's current science and technology, right? Something new is always being discovered, something new is always being invented. So if time travel is not a possibility today, that does not mean it's probably not possible ever. Maybe 10 years down the line, 50 years down the line, maybe 100 years down the line, it can be possible, but it would be possible. So if you're actually looking at design, right? Whoever thought that heavier than air devices cannot fly? We only had balloons, hot air balloons that flew. We have aeroplanes, we have rockets, right? We have always questioned assumptions. We have said, no, it is not possible because of our current understanding of science and technology. But tomorrow there'll be somebody from us who will say, no, it is possible, and they'll prove it. They'll prototype something that will actually define new technology for us, right? IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language, so many new technologies that keep evolving day in and day out. Cloud computing, I mean, imagine the amount of impact cloud computing has done to average companies. How many companies can actually afford expensive software if a company said, okay, you have to buy this software from us? The license of a software product is $1 million. How many companies can afford it? But at the same time, if I say, okay, based on SaaS model, that is software as a service, you can subscribe this from us, like how you subscribe to Airtel or any digital TV that you have, right? So you just have to pay us 150 rupees a month, right? That's it. And some X amount for maintenance and so on and so forth. It makes that technology so much available, right? Today, when we are talking of rural banking, friends, when we're talking of how to take banking to villages, to people in deep interior Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Rajasthan, Northeast India, banking is very expensive. Every account has a cost associated with it. But if you can make such software cheap for banks to help them in rural banking, they're actually bringing down the cost of operations. And thus, by doing that, you're allowing every single citizen of this country to get into the banking grid. Design. You don't have to sell a product. You can just rent it out, lease it out to them, right? So if you're thinking of design, there are so many things that we can design. And I want to explain some of the design thinking approaches based on this example. Solar panel, again, regarding the batteryless UPS, right, story. As I said at the outset, we are a country that's always hungry for power, for resources, right? Whether it's electricity, coal, petroleum, so on and so forth. Because we are a developing industrial nation, largely agrarian, but we are having a growing industrial population, lot of factories, lot of MSME units. All of them are very hungry, right, for electricity, for power. Now, that said, obviously, we would want to see a lot of solar panels on our rooftops, right? But when you're landing at an airport, when you're on an aeroplane and approaching an airport, and when you're seeing all the houses and buildings around, how many solar panels do you actually see? Hardly any, right? Mostly you only see dish antennas and clothes hanging out to dry and so on. If we are such a power-hungry nation, energy-hungry nation, why don't we have solar panels? Currently, the technology is not feasible enough, right? Let us see with this example, and this is the example that Prabhu sir spoke to us about. There is a human desirability, there is a technological feasibility, and there is a business viability. When all the three intersect, that is when you get a superb experience, right? Which this particular company called IDEO, which is a spin-off from Stanford University, they have propagated this example. And this is what they say. Let us take this in context of the solar panel story. There is a need for electricity. There is a technology that allows it to happen, right? Your solar panels. But today, the implementation cost, the maintenance cost of solar panels is a little bit on the higher side that the average industry, the average household cannot afford it. Today in India, right? You know that Elon Musk is doing research on this and there is much, much cheaper technology coming in. But today, as we speak, it's not yet in India, right? But if this is made viable, right? So if every household can afford to have their rooftops covered with solar panels, that will give you an awesome experience, right? So today it is not, but tomorrow it will be. So any great design, if there is a need for that, and if you're able to offer that product or service and you're able to offer it in a very, very pocket-friendly manner, it should be profitable for the company and it should be affordable by the people who are using it. If all these three things intersect, you get a great design, which is one approach or one definition to design thinking. And as I said, this is propagated by this wonderful design thinking company called IDEO, which is a spin-off or which came out of this popular American university called Stanford University. Let us look at another example and another approach to design thinking, Devanagari script. And we have this in Tamil as well, right? Imagine how easy studying a new language is for us. If you all remember the days when you were in your first standard, second standard, learning Tamil, learning Hindi, learning English, right? This framework that you see here, right, is making it so easy. Language as we know, Tamil language as we know, is many thousands of years ago, at least 2000 plus years ago, being very conservative, right? But many thousands if you go by Sangam literature and all that. If language as Tamil has evolved so much and it is so advanced in its grammar, in its structure and all that, imagine how difficult it would have been if there was no organized way of studying that language. Only few people would have been able to study Tamil or enjoy Tamil, or for that matter, any Hindi or Sanskrit or any other language or even English today, right? It is because we have structured alphabets and their use and all that in a certain framework like that you see here, that it is easy for children to pick this up from grade 1, grade 2 onwards. Like look at the way how it's been placed here, right? Kaka, gaga. These are words that have their sounds emanating from your throat. Then you have palatals, basically words that emanate from the roof of your mouth, cha, cha, based on how your tongue is positioned in your mouth. Then you have cerebrals, you have dentals like ta, ta, da. Your tongue is touching your teeth, right? And that's how it comes. And then labials, based on how your lips are, pa, fa, ba, right? So sound emanates from that. And because of grouping it like this, you're able to understand, oh, okay, so these are the words and this is how they are structured, this is how they emanate. And when repeatedly showcased and taught to children, they understand and they pick up written form of language. Of course, spoken language starts from home, from talking to your parents, to your family members, but the written form starts like this, right? And what does this teach you? This teaches you another approach of design thinking. This very interesting definition, right, which has 3 elements to it, was propagated by a gentleman called Roger Martin. You'll see it on the lower left part of my screen in his book called The Design of Business. And in that, he says that any problem that you come up with, right, like the gap that startups, right, typically see every day that they want to address is a mystery, right? What is a mystery? Mystery is something that you don't know. You have no idea of why it is there, why, what is the impact of it, how long will it continue, so on and so forth, like the beginning of the pandemic. But what happens is when you keep studying that mystery and when you deeply observe, you'll observe certain things called heuristics. What are heuristics? Heuristics are certain patterns, certain things that correlate with each other, certain things that work with each other, certain things that do not work with each other. We call them patterns and anti-patterns. I'll tell you what that is a little later on, right? And once you understand the heuristics, then you get in deeper and start observing what is called an algorithm. And what is an algorithm? It's not that computer algorithm that you study. An algorithm is nothing but a solution that can be repeatably created and used day in and day out. Let me give you a quick story, since you're all college students and I'm sure you're eaten at this restaurant, or you're at least aware of this restaurant called McDonald's, right? McDonald's is famous for what? For burgers, French fries, milkshakes, and so on. But if you know the McDonald's story, it's very interesting. They started way back in 1950, with one single restaurant. And when it became a big success, people love their burgers, people love their French fries. What did they do? Just like Sarvana stores that we have in Chennai, they wanted to open up multiple branches, just like your Sangeeta restaurant and all these other restaurants. Once it becomes a hit, they want to expand to other geographies, right? McDonald's did the same thing. They expanded to another area. They had 2 outlets, 3 outlets, 4 outlets. But the first thing that they faced, the first major difficulty they faced was quality was a hit. Quality was a total flop. The burgers did not taste so good in the second outlet. The French fries tasted very bad in the 4th outlet. So the first outlet, the original shop which sold burgers, French fries, and milkshakes, which was so good in quality, was not able to maintain that quality. It was a mystery. They found out, oh my God, quality is a big hit. What can I do? So what they did was they created manuals. They said, okay, if you want to cook French fries, then the potato should be a certain type of potato. It should be cut to a certain size. They should use a certain oil. The oil should have a certain degrees of heat in it, right? And only after it's reached that temperature should the French fries be put into the oil. It should be fried for exactly 3 minutes or 5 minutes. They should use exactly a certain type of salt, a certain type of powder. Burger should have a certain type of bun. So on. They created a user manual so that whenever they expanded the business, they gave that manual and people followed it. And now we know that wherever you eat in McDonald's, whether it is Chennai, outside Tambaram railway station, if it's a joint near Mahabalipuram, if it's in Pondicherry, if it is anywhere in Chennai, anywhere in the world, the taste, the quality is exactly the same. That is how McDonald's, they evolved from mystery to heuristics to algorithm. They were able to replicate the quality. Let us look at another interesting example of design. Okay, and since we are all South Indians and we spoke about food, here is a very, very interesting example. I'm sure we all eat idlis, right? In fact, my colleague who's sitting across to me and I, we had idli and vada this morning, right? And we love this food. It's our food. It's our daily breakfast, right? Daily food. Idli, vada, dosa, uttapam, same family. What is the origin for all this? It is that batter, right? It is the maavu, as we say. Now, the beauty of this thing, you might all laugh about this. What does design thinking have to do with idli, vada, dosa? But the beauty is this, my friends. 100+ years ago, when there were no refrigerators in anybody's house, right? How were the women, especially in those times, like in Chettiar families today, right? Big lot of people in one house. How will the women of the house able to cook for all the men, for all the children, for everybody in the family? Imagine they had to prepare idli and dosas. Every day they will have to prepare batter. Would it be possible? Difficult, right? Even today in small nuclear families that we are, mother, father, 2 children, maybe grandparents, that's all, 4, 5, 6 people in a house. We find that difficult to prepare batter every single day. How would how the women of 20, 30, sorry, 50, 60, 70 years ago have done it? Very difficult. But they understood that by leveraging certain challenges, that they were able to create variety, they were able to improve on nutrition, family nutrition, and they were able to get a lot of time in their hands. Simple example. When your batter is fresh, you prepare idlis. Not rocket science, no, it's very simple. But then when it becomes a little sour, right, because of the bacteria that works in the batter, you get a very interesting dish called dosa, right? The sourness in the batter improves the taste. The third day, when it becomes even more sour, it becomes vada. The fourth or fifth day, when it's even more sour, right, you create uttapams. You garnish it with onions, tomato, chili, and other side dishes like sambar, chutney, and all that, and all put together wholesome nutrition, right? Today, if you look at your own families, right, when your mother is at home and suddenly you get a guest from the village, from your neighbor walks in, and they say, okay, let us have tiffin, right? It's so easy for the women at home to immediately prepare something because they open the fridge, there is batter inside, prepare idli, dosa, whatever. It saves time. They don't have to prepare food from the beginning. And it is no surprise today that a lot of women from Tamil Nadu, from Andhra, and places like this, right, in South India, have done so greatly in academics, in fine arts, in so many different fields. You look at all the women, especially pre-independence, they had so much time in their hands. Do you think they did not take care of their family? All they did was education? I'm sure not. They would have taken care of their family, they would have cooked for their family, served their family, and still they had a lot of time and inclination to get into dance, into various art forms, into academics, becoming a doctor, so on and so forth, right? Great example of design. Now, what does this story tell us? It introduces to one more approach of design thinking. And this approach is what we have designed at Intellect Design Arena. Okay. So this is our household approach. And we usually also discuss and share this with our customers and with students like you, because it works for us and it works for many other industries across. Now, there are 4 steps to this. The first step is, as I said, in understanding requirements, stated and unstated. If you can all go back to slide number 3, where I spoke about listening, dialoguing, and observation, that plays a very important role here. Stated requirement is any requirement that the customer will tell you, that the user will tell you. Sir, there is no electricity in my house. What do I do? When electricity drops, I cannot afford a standard UPS. Can you give me a cheap batteryless UPS? That's a stated requirement. But many times there are unstated requirements, just like that family, those families that lost their children, no? Premature children. There were a lot of unstated requirements in that. Those people were illiterate, bad roads, no electricity, so on and so forth. Only when you observe will you understand the unstated requirement of your end user. It's unstated because many times the customer themselves do not know that. But so how will you get that? It's only by observing. So first step is understanding requirements, stated and unstated. The second is in observing. And what do you observe? You observe patterns and anti-patterns. You would have probably listened to me, right? In an earlier definition, I spoke about patterns and anti-patterns, mystery, heuristics, algorithm in the heuristics area, but I spoke about this. Pattern is anything that gives you a positive outcome. There are X number of people, X number of hours. When they do a certain job, I get a certain output. Clear, it's positive, it's good. And I know that and I can replicate that. An anti-pattern is just the opposite. How much ever I may try to achieve an outcome, if I'm not able to achieve that, that is an anti-pattern. And it is very important to know that, friends, because if you are not able to get the result that you want, right? Despite trying n number of times towards getting it, you know that something is not working. So don't put your effort in that. So you save on resources, you save on bandwidth, and you can apply that on areas that are more productive for you. However, if you're able to crack that anti-pattern and say, hey, now I found out a way how to make this a pattern, and now I found out how to overcome it, then you are hit upon a wonderful design thinking outcome. That is a success or a benchmark. The third thing is in connecting the dots within and outside the box. Now, what is connecting the dots is basically seeing inspiration or seeing a solution from some other source. When I say within the box, it is basically from the same department, same university, same academic industry, same country, anywhere where you see a certain similarity, a certain relationship, right? That is within the box. For example, if I'm trying to design a car with a certain feature and I'm not able to do it, and I look at some other car company that is doing something on that, I'm inspired by them. That is connecting within the box. I am a car company, they are a car company, and I'm able to relate. But connecting the dots outside the box is something looking at something totally different, a totally different industry. Let me give an example. Some of you may be aware of this story. You know this very popular eye hospital called Aravind Eye Care, which is headquartered in Madurai, right? Now, when the founder of that eye hospital, Dr. Govindappa Venkataswamy, wanted to expand the business and replicate that model across in different parts of Tamil Nadu, he reached out to all his advisors, to other doctors, to government officials, and all that. And what will they say? They'll say, sir, look at Apollo Hospital, look at Bill Roth Hospital, look at government hospital, look at other hospitals, because if they are able to do it, so you can do it as well. But Dr. Govindappa Venkataswamy did not look at other hospitals. He flew 12,000 kilometers away, landed in California at the headquarters of McDonald's. Very interesting. An eye doctor, a person who's giving healthcare, is getting inspired from the food industry, from McDonald's. Why? Because if McDonald's is able to replicate their business with the same quality within the budget of the average person who's able to buy burgers and French fries, then his eye operation should also be able to replicate across the state, across the country, offering affordable, high quality eye care treatment. And so his inspiration was not Apollo Hospital or government eye hospital, but was McDonald's. That's what the story says. So he was able to connect the dots outside the box. And finally, and most importantly, unearthing blind spots. What is a blind spot? A blind spot is something that you do not know that you do not know. I'm not a technology guy, and so I don't know Java, Python, C, all that stuff, right? I don't know that. And I know that I don't know. But there are certain things that you don't know that you do not know. And when you're developing a product or service, this is your greatest enemy. Because when you think your product is ready for the market and suddenly it fails, that comes as a big shock, because you have put so much time, so much money, so much resources. You have made so many promises to your stakeholders, and suddenly when it fails, that's a very, very bad picture, right? So the sooner you unearth your blind spot, the better it is for you. So this is the third approach to design thinking, right? Now, that said, just understanding these approaches are not enough. There are three very, very important laws of design thinking, right? It is like your laws of physics, right? Like Newton's laws. There are three laws, and unless you are aware of these three laws, you can take it almost in writing that the product or service will fail, which means that you must be aware of these three laws. These three laws are not applicable just to you. These three laws are actually applicable to your end customer. Let us see this. The first law that you see in your screen is less is more. What does this mean? Let me give an example. If you look at the BlackBerry phone, how many of you have heard of the BlackBerry? I'm not sure, but BlackBerry about 10, 12 years ago was a status symbol for anybody in the IT industry, right? If you are a manager in an IT company, if you're a manager in a big company, right, you always had a BlackBerry phone. Why? Because IT people are supposed to be very busy, right? They travel and they compose emails, they write emails on their phone, they reply to emails while traveling. They'll be on an aeroplane, they'll be in their car, and all the time they'll be writing emails, right? So when BlackBerry was thinking of adding one more key, one more button in the QWERTY keypad in the mobile phone, right, to make sending that email that much more easier, few kilometers away, and this happened in the US, again, somewhere near Silicon Valley, Couple of kilometers away, there was another gentleman who said, hey, why should my phone have so many keys here? I should just have one key to power on the phone and switch off the phone. That was Mr. Steve Jobs of Apple. So he said, my iPhone will have only one button. That's it. Everything else will be an app in the phone, and there'll be only so many apps that the customer actually needs. Anything else, anything more that he or she wants, they can always go to the App Store, download it. But when I give my phone from the factory, it will have very, very less function, very, very less apps and just one key. Less is more. Don't give the customer everything that you have just because you have so much to give. Know what the customer wants and give only what matters to the customer. Because if you try to give everything to the customer may not be interested. The second law is that the last 2% equals 200%. Now, this is a very interesting law because this law actually defines you in the market, right? What does this mean? There are so many Chinese phones, right? You have Oppo, you have Vivo, you have Huawei, you have, I don't know, there are so many phones out there, right? They're all the same. There is no difference between those phones, right? Some, if their camera is better, their processors are better, they are put in a certain price bracket. If it's less, they cost less, but they're almost all the same. There's no big difference at all. But the last 2% you put actually defines who you are, what you are. That's the theory of differentiation. How are you better than your competition? Right? I'll give you another example. What is the difference between a 5-star hotel and a 7-star hotel? If you actually go to a 5-star hotel and 7-star hotel, they're exactly the same. No difference at all. Great experience, lovely food, ambience, Wi-Fi, television, hospitality. Everything is the same. The 2% difference is the way they customize that experience for you as an individual, right? If Prabhu sir is visiting a 5-star hotel, he'll be given 5-star treatment. But if he visits a 7-star hotel, the hotel people will know that Prabhu sir likes a certain type of filter coffee. Prabhu sir likes a certain type of food, and they'll ensure that Prabhu sir gets that type of food so that he's happy there. And so what will happen? If a 7-star hotel costs a few thousand rupees more than a 5-star hotel, he will not mind going there because the experience was brilliant. They had tailor-made it for him, right? This is that law of differentiation. How are you different from your competitors? All companies do the same thing. How are you better than your competitors so that customers come to you? This is the last 2%, which equals 200%. And the third law is what we call the law or the theory of prioritization. What does this mean? This means that if you have 10 things to offer, you don't have to offer all the 10 things, just like what I said in less is more. But offer only that which makes the maximum impact for your customer. In other words, if you have a product which is just 10 grams, another product which is 100 grams, another product which is 1,000 grams, not in weight, but in the impact it makes, right? Choose that 1,000-gram product or the one that makes the most impact to your customer first, and then offer your 100-gram and your 10-gram. It should not be the other way around. Why? Because just with 5 or 6 products, if you're able to define the industry, right? Like exactly what Apple did. How many products do you think Apple has? We all talk of Apple, right? Apple phone, Apple watch, Apple this, Apple that, Apple TV, right? So many. If you look at that, they just have probably 6, 7, 8 products maximum. That's it. And with just 7 to 8 products, they have defined a complete industry. Thanks to their iPod and all that, right? They have put to sleep companies like Sony. Who buys CDs now? When you are trying to buy a music album, or when the newest Tamil movie comes out, how many of you actually buy a CD? Earlier you used to. Today you don't do that, right? Thanks to Apple, you don't do that anymore. You download everything. So these 3 laws fundamentally are very, very important when it comes to design thinking. Any product that does not conform to either of these 3 laws, I'm not saying all 3, even just one of these 3 laws, today or tomorrow, their market value will go down. So ultimately, what is design thinking? Like Padma Priya, who said at the outset, right? Design thinking is a human-centered approach. Spot on. Design thinking has to be human-centered. It is future-focused and it creates incredible value. So that said, what is the difference between traditional form of thinking, like for example, critical thinking and design thinking? This is where I would like to draw to your attention the difference between standard approaches to solving a problem versus the design thinking approach. Right? In critical thinking, or in any forms of design, any other forms of thinking, the first thing is when you come up with a problem, what is the right answer? That is what is asked, right? I know what the problem is. Now, what is the right answer to that problem? What's the solution to that problem? In design thinking, it's the other way around. What is the right question? Is the problem the actual problem that I see, or is something else the problem and this is only a symptom? In other words, ask the right questions. That is very important in design thinking. Traditional thinking, it's more about talking, right? In design thinking, it's more about listening, LDO, listening, dialoguing, observation. Traditional thinking, it's all about data. It's all about statistics, all about facts. That's very, very, very important because it tells you what is happening. So many children are dying. So much money is lost. Right? It gives you the what, but it does not give you the why. Stories give you the why. It tells you, okay, premature children were dying in a certain village, were dying in a certain country. Why did they die? Go to the village, go to the parents, talk to them, understand their story. That will tell you the why. Right? The data tells you the what, the stories tell you the why. Traditional thinking is about events. It's about certain thing happened, a certain tsunami struck, a certain earthquake happened. It's all about events. Design thinking is about the experience. Right? An earthquake happened, right? But this family was miraculously saved. How did they get saved? What did they do when the building came crashing down on them? How was this family alive? And then in that experience, you understand what happened that actually helped them to go through that trauma, go through that incident, right? Traditional thinking is all about facts, very similar to data. Design thinking is all about feelings. It goes deeper than the facts. It tells you, that's the empathy part of it. How does the end customer feel? That is important, right? So friends, when you're talking of design thinking, right, there are two aspects to it as we understand, right? Most organizations will tell you design thinking is a process. It is a set of tools. That is design thinking, but no. Design thinking actually is design the thinking, which is basically about the human mind, right? And then thinking the design, which is basically about the tools and processes. Now, while talking of the design mind, let me just give me another 10 minutes and we should be through. There are certain very important things when you approach a problem as a design thinker, right? At the end of the day, your most powerful tool is your mind. And what are those things that rule your mind, or those things that actually play a very important role in a design thinker's mind? Are 13 musical notes, as we call them, right? We shall see what those 13 notes are. The first set of 5 is called sepia, right? Like the color, the photo color, sepia, right? This is actually an abbreviation, and we call this the drivers of design or drivers of growth. And for you students, this is a nice example. You're all in college today, and in college, you get a certain skill. AVIT teaches you certain languages. It teaches you certain test processes. It teaches you certain things. You're all skilled. When you enter into the job market and work in an organization, for example, like Intellect, right? You put in 4 years, 5 years here, you become an expert. You know how to do the job so well, right? You're called an expert in that. You know how to write codes very well. You design platforms with less code, so on and so forth. But on the other side, you also get something called perspective. What is an expert and what is a perspective? An expert tells you how to go 10,000 feet deep into that subject. That is an expert. He's an expert in programming. He's an expert in C++, meaning he knows everything in C++. But perspective is just opposite. It goes 10,000 kilometers above and it gives you a big picture, right? It's just like looking at Earth from an aeroplane. And because of that, you see a bigger picture, you get ideas. And once you get ideas, that is when innovation happens. Friends, here is an interesting fun fact for you. All the great innovations of the world, right? The biggest ones have always happened because two different fields have intersected, right? Two different fields. There'll be a physicist and a painter. And this person will apply physics and painting together and you'll get a wonderful innovation, right? There was a geologist and there was a paleontologist. A paleontologist is somebody who studies about ancient life, like dinosaurs. And there's a geologist, a person who studies about the earth. Two different fields. When they intersect, they come up with the answer of how dinosaurs got extinct in the world, right? You get ideas, you get answers to solutions. And ultimately, ideas should give you alignment. You should look at the bigger picture. Why are you in an organization? Are you just here to test, to code, right, to write programs? Or are you here to design products that will actually help your end customers? That is alignment. So there are 5 elements called SEPIA: skill, expertise, perspective, idea, and alignment, which is very important. On the other side, there are 5 frictional forces called DCAF. What do they stand for? They stand for doubt, conflict, anger, fear, and ego, right? Doubt is something that we all have, and it is good to have for an extent, because if you don't have doubt and you do something wrong, you'll never know. So whenever in doubt, seek approval. Conflict is very natural. If you're working in a project, there are 10 people who are working with you, there'll be a difference of opinion, right? And that creates a conflict. Conflict is not bad. But when you have a conflict, always dialogue, listening, dialoguing, observation, the same dialogue, because dialogue tells you what is right and how to overcome that. Anger is something that's natural. It comes because of situations in which you are put, because you didn't make any mistake, somebody else would have made a mistake. And in life, many a times we get into such problems. But if you are angry, accept it and move on. Fear is something that typically comes when you're doing something for the first time. Develop courage, move on. And finally, ego. Ego comes especially people with experience. An academician, a professor with 20 years, 25 years, 30 years of experience in that subject will believe that, oh, I know it all. What is more for me to learn? But if there is anybody with such attitude, with such ego, he or she will fail to learn, will fail to improve. Why is it that we elect people like Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam? It's because of the humility that they had in them. They were always willing to learn, even from a young school child. We noticed, right, when APJ Abdul Kalam, when he used to reach out to school children, he used to talk to them like school children. He was always ready to interact with them and to learn from them. That is important. So in a design thinker's mind, along with SEPIA, there are also these 5 frictional forces. And finally, there are 3 capacity levers which are very important. They stand for vulnerability, appreciation, and limiting belief. Vulnerability is something that you will all face many times in life. For example, you're all in college right now. Once you get into a job, you join a new company, you're in a very vulnerable zone, right? You're seeing something for the first time, you have to prove yourself. But being in such a situation is good because it improves your thinking capacity. You start thinking much more how to do a certain thing, how to work in a team. You're no more a student. You're now somebody who's getting a salary or working for a company. Your thinking goes up. Appreciation is the second thing, which is very important, even more than salary, because every time you're appreciated, your confidence builds up. And this is very important for a design thinker too, because unless he or she is free of fear and other complexities, they will not think well. And limiting belief is equally important to overcome, because if you are in a limiting belief that you cannot do something, you cannot talk in English, you cannot make a public presentation, you cannot write a paper in English properly. If you have that sense of limiting belief that you cannot do, then your capacity to perform will come down so much. So it is very important to understand your capacity levers, which we abbreviate as VAL, vulnerability, appreciation, and limiting belief, because they have a direct impact on the way you perform. Right? So what we saw thus far was basically design, the thinking or aspects of design and the human mind. I will quickly go through the 5-step design thinking process, right? This 5-step process is something that we had developed in Intellect based on our experience. So if you Google design thinking process, you will see a different version from IDEO. You'll see a different version from some other organization. This is what we do at the School of Design Thinking at Intellect Design Arena Limited. Now, what is the 5-step process? The first step is to feel, basically to empathize, right? Empathy, that is to feel from the customer's shoe. You have to look at the details here. You also have to look at the bigger picture here. And there are many tools that you can use here, like the empathy tool, listening, dialoguing, observation. There are so many things. There is something called stakeholder mapping, which basically tells you who are all the stakeholders. Especially for my friends from the startup, it is very important that they understand who their stakeholders are, right? Because as stakeholders, nobody is not just somebody who has invested in your company. It is anybody who has to do anything with what you're doing. In fact, for example, the medical organ box, who all would your stakeholders be? It is not just the hospital. It is not just the ambulance driver. It is not just the patient. It is not just the people who are investing in your company. It also includes the traffic police. It also includes the highway department. It also includes the airways, depending on how that organ box is traveling. It also includes many other people that you do not think right now play an important role, but who have a great role to play. So truly understanding the stakeholder is very, very important. Then you have user needs and you have something called persona. Persona is nothing but the fictitious nature of your end user. How do you understand that end user? Do you truly know who he is, where he is from, where she is from? What are their aspirations? What are their fears, challenges, and so on? Very, very important. The second step is to define the problem. How do you define the problem? By asking the right questions, to paraphrase the problem statement, to understand what the two opportunities. For this, you have to be like a reporter, like a news reporter, right? Pudiya Talamurai, Polymer News, Sun News, Jaya News, all these reporters, they get into the field, they keep asking question after question after question to get the answer. While working on a problem statement, you have to think like a reporter. It's very, very important. There is a very interesting tool here called the 5i tools, which was created by Toyota. This basically tells you how to go to the root cause of the problem, basically RCA, as we say, root cause analysis. So this is a tool that helps you to go into the foundation of that problem. The third step is divergence. Very interesting step, because this is the step wherein you start coming up with ideas, as many ideas as you can. You generate ideas, you create possibilities. You, for one single problem, you might come up with 100 or 1,000 different ideas. Very important thing here, friends, is to generate as many ideas as you can, because in this phase, it is all about generating possibilities, generating ideas. The next is convergence. From that 1,000 ideas, how could you come down to the 10 most doable, most optimum solutions? There are certain tools you use here, like the theory of prioritization, 10 gram, 100 gram, 1,000 gram. What is the most impactful solution? How do you connect the ideas using mind map and so on? How do you classify the ideas into what can be quick, what can be done, which is a bold solution, and which is a long lasting solution? You make choices, you delete 80 to 90% of your ideas. And then on those 2 or 3 ideas, you prototype it, you test it, you do all that, and then you finally come out with that one most best solution that you think will work for the market. Now, I would like to share one very quick story about a very popular company called Zappos. Zappos in 2005-2006 was a website which was created by a gentleman called Nick Swinburne. And this website was basically simple. It's like Amazon. What did it do? They focused on shoes. So when Nick Swinburne went to various shoe shops and said, hey, this is very nice. There are so many different types of shoes here. Can I sell shoes via the internet? And what he did was he immediately got the idea, and instead of just wasting time doing research, he created a prototype. He worked on certain parameters, like if somebody buys, how do I deliver it to them? If the shoe size does not fit them, how can I get a return? This revealed a lot of hidden blind spots to him. He worked on that and he came up with a wonderful site. He tied up with a lot of neighboring shoe shops to sell their shoes via his website or through his website. And in 2009, in just about 3 to 4 years after he created, Amazon bought this website. And you know for how much they bought it? They bought it for, I think, $350 million. Sorry, $940 million. I'm sorry. A website that was just 3.5 years old in the market, right? Not completely concretized, was bought by Amazon for $940 million. That is the power of prototyping and actually putting into action what you have designed. And once you have designed that, the fifth and the last important step is communication. You need to name your product correctly. You need to package your product correctly. You need to have a good storyboard. In narrating that story, you need to present it and you need to distribute that product or service perfectly. For those of you who are in Chennai, who are from Chennai, and those of you who are into biking, here is a very simple, interesting story that you all will be aware of. About 7-8 years ago, TVS Motors, which is a Chennai-based company, right? We all know about TVS Motors, the people who have come up with Apache and all these brilliant bikes, also came up with a wonderful bike called TVS Jive. I'm sure many of you would have noticed that bike. It is no more on the roads, unfortunately, but this is the beauty of the bike. In traffic, like in Mount Road and other places, when there is bumper to bumper traffic, right? Holding the clutch, especially for bikers, is very painful, right? Every time pressing the clutch. Secondly, in bumper to bumper traffic, you have to keep stopping all the time, which means you have to keep changing your gear. Many times your engine stalls if you're on a high gear and your bike will suddenly stop, which is again painful. You have to come back to neutral, again kickstart your bike, get into first gear and then move. Now, and all this also has its additional toll on mileage. Now, what did TVS do? They came up with this wonderful bike that said, hey, there is no clutch lever, but no problem. You can still do manual gearing because men like, to have manual gear bikes. They don't like to sometimes travel on a scooter, right? They like to have that gear. So there is a manual gear. It's a beautiful bike frame. It's not a step through frame like a TVS Jupiter or any such thing. It's that step saddle frame like how your Apaches and Pulsars are. Brilliant painting, color scheme, and so on. 70 plus kilometers per liter mileage. And the beauty is, even if you're going 20 kilometers per hour speed, just 20, you can still go on the fourth or the fifth gear. Your vehicle will not stall. You can stop in any gear. You can start your bike in any gear. Brilliant, no? Especially if you're in bumper to bumper traffic. If the bike is so good and has such great qualities, why did TVS pull the bike out? Today, you hardly see any showroom selling TVS. Nobody owns a TVS bike, a TVS Jive, except people who bought it 7-8 years ago. Why is it outside the market? To me, it did not seem like a technological problem because I personally owned a TVS Jive, a brilliant bike. Was it because they were not able to sell the story? Maybe. So communication is very, very important. You need to know, if you have a great product, how to market that product, how to market your idea to your stakeholders, to your investors. It's very, very important. So yeah, so I think I have finished in time. So that, my friends, is a very quick introduction to design thinking. The first part being design that thinking. We saw about design, we saw about the human mind, we saw about certain approaches to design thinking. And what we saw in the past 5 to 7 minutes was the actual design thinking approach. The reason why I gave it less importance in terms of time is because this is something that you have to actually get down and do. There are so many different ways in which you can think design, right? So different approaches to design thinking, 5-step process, 6-step process, and so on. But friends, it is only when you get down, get your hands dirty, do design thinking, that is when you get to feel it. So that, my friends, is the quick overview of the 5-step process. As you can see here, to prepare the mind, there is the first stage, which is feel, define, diverge, converge, and communicate. And it is not linear. So though it is presented linear here, it's a cyclic process. You have to again go back to the feel stage when you are coming up with another version of your product, or if you're having a problem in the prototyping stage, which shows certain gaps in the way you've done your product, you have to go back, study the market again, redo the entire thing and come up. So it's a cyclic process. So this is the 5-step design thinking process. Thank you. So if there are any questions, I'll be very, very happy to answer them. Any questions, friends? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Some of you have actually typed in chat. Sorry, I couldn't see the chat. Traffic signal. So I guess Raja Prakash was talking about bad design, traffic signals. Very true, Raja Prakash. Because what happens is, one, traffic signals are bad. I mean, many of them don't work. But the worst thing is that there are signboards in front of traffic signals. I don't know how many of you are from in or around Krompet. If you approach Hasnapuram Bridge, right, on Krompet, you will see that there's a traffic signal opposite, what's that showroom? There's some very popular show. There's a Indian Oil petrol pump also. But you will not see the traffic signal unless you're 5 feet away, 5 feet away from it. For the simple reason, there are boards in front of the traffic signal. How worse can design get? A traffic signal should tell you that, okay, it's going to be a red light, slow down your vehicle when you're about 200 meters away, right? That's why you have red and green as colors. But if it is covered with signboards and so on, that's very bad design. So you're right, Raja Prakash. Traffic signals are sometimes very poor designs. Any ideas that you friends have? Anybody from the startups? I mean, I was told there are 8 startups. Anybody from those startups who are participating here? Okay, so I think there are no questions. So Subhapriya ma'am, if the faculty have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Or
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Faculty friends, if you have any queries, you can discuss with sir. I think we can close the session, sir.
okay, thank you.
Padma Priya.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, sir. Really, the session was very informative for us and it will be very useful for us for the future design thinking. Now, I would like to invite Mrs. Subhapriya ma'am, convener of IIC AVIT, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Padma Priya. On behalf of Institute, I take privilege in proposing vote of thanks. I thank our management, Principal Sir Dr. G. Selvakumar for giving us the opportunity to conduct this event. I thank our Vice Principal Academics, Professor L. Prabhu Sir, who always guides and motivates us to do such events. I thank our guest speaker for the day, Dr. Ramakrishnan Ramani, Assistant Vice President, Intellect Design Arena, who has generously accepted our invitation to share his knowledge on design thinking. Sir has done excellent articulation on design thinking, which will be helpful for us to all our innovators. I would also thank Mr. Ramnath Prabhu Sir from Intellect Design for making possible arrangements for the successful of the event today. I would like to thank our Mr. Praveen, President IIC, Mr. Prabhaharan, Innovation Activity Coordinator, for their tremendous support. I thank Department IIC coordinators, faculty colleagues, and my dear students for their active participation. I thank our web team and social media team for their support. Last but not the least, I thank Padma Priya, final year student of Biomedical Engineering, for moderating throughout this event. Once again, I thank you all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
It was really an excellent session, and thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Shall we end the session, sir?
We sent it on 27th February.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank
Thank
you.
जिम्मेदारी